Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya-madhyamam Asmadacharya-paryantam Vande Guru-paramparam. Namah Pranavarthaya Shuddha-jnanaika-murtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaya Shri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Namaste Astu Bhagavan Vishweshwaraya Mahadevaya Triambakaya Tripurantakaya Trikalagnikalaya Kalagnirudraja Neelakantaya Mrityunjaya Sarveshwaraya Sadashivaya Shriman Mahadevaya Namaha. Om Shivaya Namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaveetyankaravavaghe Tejasvinavadhetamastu ma Vishavaghe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tatsate. So there was a question from the last class that we need to address, and somebody was sending me. Right. So one question was, does moderation play a role in the practice of tapasya? Moderation, in the sense, we have to understand in the context of tapasya. Right? So what is the goal of tapasya? Tapaha means fire, to burn. So tapasya is basically challenging our limitation, right? Our comfort zone. Tapasya's fundamental idea is to challenge our comfort zone, build resilience both in the body and in the mind. Diksha. And also to reinforce certain samskaras. Tapasya is to intensify the power of the divine samskaras so that they can burn here in the sense they can overpower the effect of the negative samskaras and the habit patterns. So basically building enough momentum in order to rise above the force of habit pattern. That is the point of tapasya. So tapasya will not be comfortable by definition. So what does moderation in tapasya mean? Moderation in tapasya means pushing ourselves to a point and stopping before it harms our health, pushing up to a point from which we can come back, in the sense pushing ourselves to a point up to which our physical health does not suffer. To the point where our mental stability does not suffer. The mental stability and balance, hormonal balance and all that they say, no? Where whatever disturbance in the vata pitta kapha that we might have incurred during tapasya, there is a level of resilience for the body and for the subtle body. It must be up to the point within the elastic limit, we can say, up to the point from where we can bounce back, and it should not leave a permanent damage which affects our practice. It should not leave the kind of damage that will bring down the quality of our sadhana in the coming days. something that will make us so tired that one day of tapasya will lead to 3 or 4 days of laziness and frustration. That is not tapasya. So moderation in tapasya is important. At the same time, it is important also not to be too comfortable in the name of moderation. And also, what is our comfort level, our limit of comfort? What is our limit of tolerance? I will put. What is our limit of tolerance changes from person to person. For what is my limit of tolerance for a particular kind of tapasya will be different from what is the limit of tolerance for you or some other person. So, especially when we are in a family or in a community or we have some friends, it is normal to be worried about another person that is close to us, but we cannot impose our standards of tapasya on them. Both ways, both in ambitiousness. Suppose we see that somebody is not putting enough effort in the tapasya, let's say to a friend. We want to motivate them, but we have to take care not to push them beyond the comfort zone. We have to understand what is their tolerance. That is going to take, let us say, an hour or so, an hour and a half, and you are supposed to do it with the sankalpa. Sankalpa means making the wish and a resolve, taking a resolve and then sitting until you complete that. You will not move from the place. Now, you might start very ambitiously by sitting in Padmasana. If you are a Hatha Yoga practitioner who has conditioned the body and your body cooperates and you don't have arthritis and other problems, it is all right to sit in Padmasana and endure a little bit of pain that might come in the last 15 minutes or so. And after you remove the leg, you will do a few stretches and the residual pain left by the long sitting in Padmasana goes away in a few minutes. Sorry. In that case, sitting in Padmasana and enduring a little bit of difficulty and pain is all right. But let us say you are a 70-year-old person and you have some arthritis and all that. You can't even sit in cross-legged for more than 10 minutes. So in that case, it is better to sit in a chair comfortably and to work with the psychological discomfort of having to sit in the same posture for 1 hour. That is also a problem. In asana practice, Patanjali says, Prayatna Shaitilya Ananta Samapatti. Relaxation of effort and meditating on the limitless in order to obtain steadiness in the posture. So, when you are staying in one posture and you are focusing on keeping it stable, there will be a lot of subconscious tendencies for moving the body. There will be kind of a restlessness, an instinctive kind of a restlessness in the body where you feel like moving your toes, moving your fingers. So now those things are not connected to body's ability to sit. Those things are connected to the mind's restlessness and inability to sit. So in this tapasya of sitting for 1 hour and repeating chanting, you can keep your limbs absolutely still and ignore the suggestions of the mind and concentrate on the chanting. And keep the resolve to sit for that 1 hour and repeat the mantra or shloka for the decided number of repetitions, no matter how you feel. Whether you are comfortable or not comfortable, you finish that. So that is an example of tapasya, for example. Similarly, fasting, if you are doing pradosha vrata or ekadashi vrata, 124 hours, if you are doing fasting, it is not going to be comfortable, especially if you are not used to fasting. Right? Now, if you are an old person, you are diabetic and you're taking medications and things like that, then you will have to convert that tapasya in a way that will not harm your health. You cannot, this person cannot do a 24 hours complete fasting like a normal healthy person can do. A young person can do 24 hours fasting and go through some hunger. Absolutely all right. Even if they develop a little bit of acidity, it can be cleared the next day. It's not a problem. But if somebody is under specific medications and things like that, one should not do 24-hour fasting. Instead, one can take some fruit or some sattvic food without salt, non-stimulating food, just a little bit, and not how we eat usually. Maybe skip one meal, things like that. One can do that. And maybe consult once a doctor and see how the medicine works. Can I suspend the medicine for 1 day when during the fasting? So this kind of discussions can be done. Nothing will happen if you stop everything for 1 day, usually, unless it is a very critical situation. So one can consult the related experts for that, the medical expert or whatever, then decide what is, and find out using common sense and rational mind, find out what is my level of tolerance in the body, actual level of tolerance in the body, you find out, and you endure the psychological discomfort. So there are two things happening in tapasya: physical discomfort, psychological discomfort. Psychological discomfort you endure to the point where you don't go crazy. Physical discomfort you endure to the point where you don't become sick. So that is the limit for moderation. Okay, regarding tapasya. Now the second question: I observe my earlobes turning red and getting heated up prior and sometimes after dharana practice. How do I ease this phenomenon? It's all right. In concentration, it is because of gathering of energy. It can happen because of two reasons. One, it can happen because of energetic conflict. There is a lot of inner struggle fighting with your natural mind. Naturally, your mind wants to run around, or it's busy, busy bringing up memories and thoughts and all that. That residue, that background unconscious egoistic mind that keeps popping up. And you're making a conscious effort fighting it. So, in the name of concentration, most of the effort goes in fighting the distraction. So, this is one kind of heat generated because you are fighting the distraction. There is another kind. The body heats up because it is burning the impurities in the nadis, and any concentration of energy increases heat. Tapas also means heat, right? For example, there was a incident where a person, a sadhaka, a practitioner of mantra sadhana, went and asked Sringeri Shankaracharya ji, the previous one, the vibration pattern of the mantra, and the moment you think of the mantra, your prana will start taking up the vibration pattern of the prana. Your core prana will start vibrating according to the mantra, right? It will take up the form of the mantra. Your pranic body will take up the form of the mantra and the frequency of the mantra. So that is called mantra siddhi. Hmm? So consciousness of mantra will pervade the body. That is mantra siddhi. So, we know. Then, the scriptures said that, if you, then Acharya ji tells him, if you spread pori, if you spread some paddy under the seat where you are staying, where you are sitting for the japa practice, you spread some paddy and sit on it and do your mantra. If you have mantra siddhi, within a few minutes, the paddy will start popping into pori. That popped paddy, that how it makes that, like you have popcorn, you have pop rice. So the paddy will start popping like popcorn. So that is the sign of mantra siddhi, he says. And then this person couldn't believe, come on, Acharya ji is kidding. So he thinks that he is joking. So of course, being Shankaracharya, being a great yogi, he reads his thoughts and says, so you don't believe me? Let us see if the scriptures are true. And then he asks somebody to bring him uh, some paddy, and he spreads the paddy, the rice grains, under the seat and sits and concentrates. So within a minute, all the paddy starts popping like popcorn, right? Like this, all the paddy starts popping, and then he falls at his feet and says, "Please forgive me for my doubt. I understand now. The scriptures are not talking now; they mean what they say." Then he goes away, right? So that is heat. Why is the paddy popping? The paddy will pop because of heat, but it is not the heat like fire. It is a certain kind of energetic heat where the energy gets concentrated. In this case, the body can become very hot. Uh, so these two kinds of situations. So we don't know how it is. So only the person who is doing the practice will know what kind of heat it is. So the feeling heat coming out of the ears is usually indicates uh, mental conflict. That's what it usually indicates, because you are struggling, the brain is getting heated up. So one has to do some other practices to stabilize the prana in the nabhi, and also to slow down the subconscious mind, and after that practice dharana. Probably more nadi shuddhi is needed, and maybe the dharana can be done on a more cooling object, a mentally more pleasing object, and then you can move on to more classical things like dharana and the forehead and the eyebrow center and things like that. So I need to know what kind of dharana practice this person is doing in order to give the right kind of technical suggestion. But this is the basic principle behind it. Two kinds of heat. So each person knows what kind of heat it is, depending on how your mind behaves. You have absolutely no conflict. It's effortless concentration. Then the heat is because of the energy concentrating, and usually it does not. It takes time. It doesn't come out through the ears. It will come like heat in the nabi. Body usually travels up the spine, things like that. It's a little different. So now I will see. There are some more messages in the chat. Let me see what are they. You can't hear me now? Hello?
Now we can hear you. Sorry to bother. Earlier it was like not audible, and in the time when you are mentioning about Acharya ji, like question, beginning of that we couldn't hear, but we understood. In the middle, sometime the voice was breaking or like going off and coming back in 20 seconds or something.
Oh, I'm using the new headphones because of.
Like now we can't hear anything. Just saying hello.
One second, hold on.
Okay.
Okay. How is it now?
Yes, audible.
Is better audible?
Yes, I was just letting the other, like the organizer would say, I thought. So I didn't say anything. I just wrote in the message. Sorry.
Right. No problem. Now is it audible? I will continue here.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Thank you.
So there is no question. It's only about. Fine. So is there any other questions people have, or we can go ahead with? some specific topic of discussion.
Yes, I have a question. One question.
Yes.
Um, when we are like into the practice of reducing rajas and tamas, as in yoga practice, is for how to communicate with people, like in general times, like work or business or other outside things, with people who has more of, let's say, in a nice way, rajas more, or we can say like very ego
You will have to
centered.
rephrase your question. I'm not understanding.
Okay, how to communicate in situations when the self practice is to reduce rajas and tamas, but then how to deal or communicate with people who is like intense in rajas or egoistical centered.
Ah, depends on what is your role there. Who are you to that person?
Business work communication.
A business work, we are not responsible for the rajas and tamas. So in business and work, we will have to take care of the people's ego. So we have to make their ego comfortable so that the business is done. That's all. We are not responsible for the rajas and tamas, their purification. Their self purification is their job. We are not here to save the world. So in a business or a normal worldly transaction, we behave according to our role and try to be pleasing to their ego, so that all their inner demons don't come in the way of the business. That's about
Thank you.
yes. Always what we do is connected to the purpose, right? So dharma of a situation is always connected to our purushartha. So if our goal is different, the approach is different. In the middle of, let us say, we are undertaking an action. This is one of the main things, in our dharma, that people get confused because of this globalized generic spirituality that is not according to the traditional approach. Because of that, a lot of people have lost their career, made wrong decisions in life. uh, they've lost precious time, and then they regret later. They take to a so-called spiritual lifestyle when they are not ready. People who are supposed to be very active in the society, they renounce and try to be and live in an ashram, and then they want to come back to normal life after they are 40, 45. All these things are a problem because nowadays spirituality has become an industry. Because of that, there is a lot of wrong teaching going on without considering what is called in the shastra as adhikari bheda. Adhikari bheda means categorizing the people according to their aptitude. Aptitude means what are you good for? What kind of lifestyle is good for this person? So traditionally, the gurus, they always thought about the welfare of the student first, the welfare of the society and the people, without compromising the demands of the shastra, without compromising the demands of the dharma in the big scale, and also without compromising they always try to find a solution taking care of individual dharma and the collective dharma. But what happened is spirituality became spirituality, teaching, yoga, Vedanta, all this has become a career now. So each one has opened a shop, and there is a huge pressure to capture a portion of the market. So because of that, this guru's own goals and sustaining an organization becomes more important than what is best for the individual. So when we really focus on what is best for an individual, we will not cross a certain line and impose our agenda on others. That is actually violence. We have to understand our role in every situation. I'm extremely scared to tell some spiritual instruction to somebody, because we don't know how it will impact their life, when and after how much time. So we are not omniscient, right? So unless one is a sarvagya, like how Yoga Sutra says, Ritambara Tatra Prajna, the one whose mind is completely in tune with the cosmic intelligence, right? So except for that person, most of the teachers, we all work based on our best understanding. Sometimes there is because of the divine grace, there is a tuning and there is some kind of a channeling. So the grace directs we hope that the grace directs our thinking and our actions and our words. And when the person is committed to a spiritual lifestyle in a good way, in an integral way, without hypocrisy, generally the divine guidance flows through the person. So that is the whole point of asking the student to have Shraddha, right? So this Adhikari Bheda, also the concept of Desha Kala Patra, what I have to do in a given situation, depends on where I am doing, for what purpose I am doing, with whom I am doing this, with whom I am having this interaction, for what purpose, and that decides my dharma. That decides my dharma in that situation, what I am supposed to do in that situation. All these factors come into play. Right? So I might be a teacher, but I am not everybody's teacher. As long as a person doesn't come and ask me, please take me as your disciple and please teach me, I want to learn this. As long as a person doesn't ask me, I have absolutely no right to teach anything to anyone, to that person. Until that person asks me, I am only a friend, I am a fellow human being, being committed to dharma, being committed to uh, the humanity's welfare and all that. So always doing things that are good for everyone, that becomes a natural commitment for a spiritually committed person. So as based on that, I am a friend or a well-wisher for anybody. I means any teacher, any individual, you or me or anybody. So from that point of view, if I see that somebody is in trouble, probably I can make a suggestion. I think that it's better, if it is done in this way. But when we have a business transaction, we have a normal worldly transaction, that situation is there for me to achieve a certain result without compromising the ethics of the situation, without exploiting the other person's weakness and all that, while highlighting my strength and to get the thing done. Right? During the process, if I can bring in a better quality of interaction, if I can bring in a better uh, quality of consciousness into the entire process, where that person feels good in the end, I have a good intention, probably I can suggest something that will improve the quality of our interaction and probably take our interaction to a next level. I can make some suggestions. But my aim there, but I have to, my aim there is that business transaction, whatever I'm doing. My aim there is not transform that person. So I don't know the entire background of that person, whether the person is ready or not. Especially if I am a sadhaka, if I am a spiritually committed person doing spiritual practices, it is very important to not bring forth our spiritual energy and impose it on the other person. Very, very important not to bring our spiritual energy and impose it on the other person, because from the subtle level, if I invoke my spiritual power over another person, even with an intention, it can change the course of things for another person. It is not a joke. Is that person willing or not? We don't know, right? So if that person is not willing, why should I interfere in that person's subtle energy field, right? So we should not do that, especially as teachers, as facilitators, as instructors, as acharyas. It is very important to stay within our stay within, keep our energies within ourselves, stay within our perimeter. Do not cross into other person's personal space if it is not required. We cross into other person's personal space only if they permit. For example, we can give a suggestion in Chandogya Upanishad that the father asked the son, after the son is very boastful about, because he is a father, okay, it's not doing some business transaction. The person is a father. Even while being the father, after the son is bragging about all that he has learned, he asks the son, has your teacher taught you that by knowing which everything can be known? Has he taught you that? That by knowing which everything is as well known. Etat vijñātam sarvam vijñātam bhavati. Has your teacher taught you that? He pokes the person to think in a different direction, and that's it. And then waits for the son's samskara to kick in, and then tells him a suggestion to go back to his teacher and ask. Then the teacher sends him back to his father to learn, and then he asks him, please teach me. And after that, the teaching of Vedanta begins. Right? Atma Vidya begins there. So, and in Bhagavad Gita, we see another example of teaching. Lord Krishna has been doing like a cousin, like two cousins, Lord Krishna and Arjuna are cousins, friends. So he has helped Arjuna get girlfriend. He has helped Arjuna in war. They have played together. They have done all kinds of nonsense as young people, Now these two are in the war. Until Arjuna asks, he tells, because he is his friend and well-wisher, when Arjuna got depressed and put his bow down and arrow down, and he said, I am not going to do anything. The first chapter of Bhagavad Gita describes that. And then I am not going to wage this war. And then Arjuna sits down. Then he pokes him up, and he does not teach Atma Vidya, he does not teach what is the highest. He only prods him as a well-wisher to rise up to the occasion and points out to his error in judgment, dharmic judgment, what to do, right? He points out, and these are all the things, where from this negative state of mind has taken over you, and then he points out his error. And then once Arjuna gets shaken up, he realizes that somewhere his understanding is wrong, and then he asks Lord Krishna, I am submitting myself, surrendering it to you as a disciple. Please take me as your disciple and show me what is the ultimate good. Tell me what is ultimate good, Shreya, right? So since he asks for that, after that, the teaching begins in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So after Arjuna requests Lord Krishna to teach him, then the teaching begins. Until that time, he didn't teach. He's been watching him. And even as a friend and a well-wisher, he only told him, hey, get up, rise up to the occasion. I don't think what you're doing is okay. So that's very different. And then only he starts teaching. Takes Arjuna, starts working with his ignorance only after he asks. So that is one type. And another is what I told you about in Chandogya Upanishad, where the father tells the son, prompts him to think in another direction. And then the teaching begins only after the student asks, right? So this is shows him another possibility, because he is the father. He has a responsibility there. He has a role to play there, right? So he is taking him to the next level of learning. So we have to see what is our role, because before we are concerned about the other person's rajas and tamas. Also, we need to understand the whole world cannot be sattvic. That is against the nature's order of things. There are going to be tamasic people, there are going to be rajasic people, there are going to be sattvic. The world cannot function if everybody is sattvic. That is one. And we have what is called as yuga dharma, the normal dharmic tendencies of this era in which we are living. So we are in Kali Yuga, right? In Kali Yuga, adharma has an upper hand than dharma when it comes to. So there is a probability of coming across adharma, probability of coming across ignorance and tamas and rajas is higher in Kali Yuga than in any other age. And in Kali Yuga, especially, our job is not to transform the world. The world will go in its own order. The world will go in its own path. In its own collective destiny will take care of itself. Unless I am an avatara Purusha, no, unless I am an incarnation, even as an incarnation, they only address a specific problem for which they are incarnated. Right? So Rama took care of Ravana and Krishna took care of a few demons, but they did not go around the world. You know, Rama did not go to Africa, South America, and everywhere else. Right? So even as an avatar, there is a specific role to play. So unless I am a Karana Purusha, I have taken birth for bringing transformation to a certain portion of the world, to the society for a certain greater purpose. It's none of my business to interfere in the course of the world if I don't have a role. I interfere only according to the role and my duty, what I'm supposed to do. That is why, Sadarame Nidanam Shreyaha Paradharmo Bhayavaha. Doing another person's dharma is dangerous, and it is better to underperform in one's own dharma, even if you know that you can do somebody else's job better than them. Even if you know that you can do somebody else's job better than them, don't do that job. And whatever is your job, try to make it to do your best in your job. Just because you can do somebody's job better than them, you cannot switch your roles. Stick to your role, whatever based on your karma, dharma has brought to you. Of course, in the Shastra, it is talking based on Varnashrama dharma. That is not applicable now anymore in most of the contexts. Sorry. So we have to interpret it according to our common sense. So basically, if I don't have a role to play in the transformation of a person, I am not supposed to do. Even if I have a role to play, I will have to facilitate a consent from their side and then only interfere in their course of things. So that would be the governing principle of.
One more follow-up question on this,
Yes.
just to get the clarity. Since you said we should mind our own dharmic actions and we are not here to save the world or something like that. So
save even another person. That's not our job. Unless
yes,
the person asks you to.
yes. So this is a follow-up from that. So if so in the point of, let's say, they call themselves activist, right? In any kind of thing, activist. So they say like it is a, they don't, the other people doesn't know, they are ignorant. So we have to go and do this. This is the right thing to do. Like for example, vegan activist. So they
Okay.
do this. So how to see this one, or if what, how a vegan activist in yoga, is it possible? That's all. Thank you.
So being an activist can be brought under the category of Kshatriya Dharma. Right? Basically transforming the society, taking care of the society. So I have taken it up as my job, my main thing. Then I will have to understand the activism under the larger context of. So I have to see what is governing my. I have to see what is governing my decision making. No, what is my framework? An activist. If I am an activist, my decision making framework will be based on. It will completely be based on the Shastra. It will be based on Dharma Shastra only. So I will have to understand the big picture, and I will have to tune my activism within the certain limits, and I will have to understand that my activism has certain limits. I cannot cross. So I have to know what lines I am not supposed to cross. That's very important. But most of the activities, like, most of the activities of our age is not based on any common sense framework. It is based on individual passion. That is what is, nowadays, if you see the activists, all the activists are based on individual passion. So generally, what we do, we take example from the lives of great people. For example, Sri Adi Shankaracharya was an activist. If you want to put it like that, he was an activist. He went around, but he was there to establish the Vaidika Dharma and to establish Vedanta. There also, he is not carrying out his individual wish. The Vedanta Parampara was already there. And because of a lot of adharma and lack of understanding, because of the presence of a lot of false knowledge cult around, like Buddhism and all kinds of isms around, because of that, it's like a cloud covering the sun. Because of the lot of cults, fake spiritual cults around in the country, because of that, this knowledge of Vedanta was covered up and was not available. So, and there was a lot of misunderstanding and wrong interpretations of the scriptures. So he had a very specific goal. His only job was to go around to establish the true import of the Shastra. That was his goal. And he did not go and disturb those who are not believing in the Shastra. Okay. And whoever has a commitment, so he was only debating with scholars with whom the debate makes sense. So he was talking, the 72 schools are all, he debated with them because they were interpreting Shastra wrongly. So there was a debate, there was a proper methodology. And his goal was not to impose his whims and fancies or his point of view on the thing, but his goal was to bring out what is already there in the Shastra. In spite of being an avatara, recognized as an avatara who had superpowers, he had superpowers as a kid. So he could bring Mother Ganga in front of his house in his village in Kaladi. Right? He could stop the entire flood of Narmada when he went to visit his Guruji, Govinda Bhagavat Pada. He could stop the entire flood of Narmada just by keeping his kamandalu there on the banks. He did not cross that kamandalu. That is the level of his tapasya. He was an avatar with superpowers. It's like an Avenger kind of thing. And still, he went through the process. And he took sannyasa under a guru. And then he went around, he took a proper sannyasa. He knew all the mantras and everything. Still, he took a proper sannyasa and respected the process. And after the command of the guru, he went around clarifying the true meaning of the Shastra. So though it is an activism, it is an activism that is controlled within a certain standard frame of understanding and knowledge and methodology. So if a person is an activist, they have to understand what are they if a vegan activist, for example, to understand their purpose. And they have to understand the limits of veganism. And I have to see, why should I do that? And why am I doing that? Is it because of my own personal thing? Or is there a body of knowledge that is outside of me? Is there an objective standard knowledge, either scientific or pramana, either scientific or spiritual, that makes it necessary for this activism to go on? And what are the limits and where I am crossing the line? All these things that person should think about and be aware of, and not be an activist on impulse. So whatever they are doing in activism, only they themselves know. They have to ask themselves, they are doing it out of an impulse, or are they doing it after a lot of introspection based on an objective standard that is outside of them? So that's what they have to, that is for them to decide. So if the activist is not coming to us to ask for an advice, on how to be the correct way of what would be the correct limits of activism. As long as they don't knock on our door, we have no business to go and disturb them. They can be an activist. It's their problem, their karma, their adharma, their punya, their papa. Unless we have a role to correct them, we don't have to tell. But if we have a role to correct them, let us say if one of my disciples is an activist, then I will make sure that the person understands the limits. I will have a discussion. I will have a samvada, but that it is a samvada. So it is the person has to trust my judgment above his or her own judgment. And then the person has to take, we have to arrive at a conclusion. If I don't know some facts, I will ask. So at the end of the debate, if the person is my disciple, we will arrive at a conclusion, and the person has to take my perspective because he or she has come to me for guidance, and then I will guide according to the nature of the person, according to the purpose for which that person has come. So it is very, very individual specific and situation specific. And as far as from what I understand, for example, in veganism, jivo jivena jivan, life feeds on life, right? So this is the law of life. It is there, very much there. And complete vegan world is not possible. There is going to be meat eating. There is going to be, so what they can do probably is within every industry there is dharma, right? So within the meat industry there are certain standards they are supposed to follow, which they themselves have agreed upon. So probably these vegans can try to, these activists can try to actualize those standards, to try to make sure those standards are being followed. Whatever those are, suppose if I am running a dairy industry, I have agreed on paper to follow certain standards with respect to treatment of animals and all that. So these activists can ensure that those standards are implemented, and they can go through judicial activism or whatever, protests or whatever, to make sure that the standards are followed. They can expose the wrong practices. These kind of things can be done. But I want the whole world to be vegan. All human beings should be vegan. I don't think it is possible, and I would consider that as not a very intelligent idea. So one has to know one's limits while being an activist. That is how I would see this.
Thank you so
And
much.
also, I have a suggestion here. Whoever is asking questions, please ask questions that are relevant for oneself. Don't ask questions that are not relevant for you. Don't ask questions for somebody else's sake. I see that pattern coming up a few times. So please ask questions regarding things that matter for you and your own growth and your own sadhana, and not ask questions for others' sake. In order to drive a point for somebody else, it is better to not ask a question here. So this session is for discussing certain issues that bothers oneself primarily. So Desha Kala Patra, that is something that we need to understand, and it requires study and reflection. To be able to study and reflect on anything in an objective manner, it requires a kind of being objective about oneself, and requires a certain level of skepticism about our own conclusions. Because I feel strongly about something, that does not mean it is right. That does not mean I have to do it. I have to develop a certain level of skepticism about my own strong conclusion and evaluate them according to an objective standard, what we call as knowledge, body of knowledge, what we call as pramana, either science or spiritual scriptures and tradition. I have to put it under the crucible of pramana, and I have to try to see what is the validity of my own conclusion. Not eternally, questioning all my conclusions. I have to stop at a point and start acting. But it is important to have a certain level of skepticism about my own strong conclusions, so that I am not carried away by my own likes and dislikes. and rather I am more committed to reality. I am more committed to objective reality and to the spiritual laws that are transmitted to us through the tradition and Shastra, Sampradaya, and common sense and science. All this have to go together so that we are able to understand Dharma in a better and better way as we grow, and making ourselves available for Dharma. The practice of yoga helps us to handle our inner pressures so that we are more available for Dharma. Practice of yoga helps us to handle our own wrong conclusions so that we are more available for the knowledge revealed by Vedanta. And the practice of upasana helps us to keep away the negative unconscious influences that drive our mind from the back, from the behind. We don't know how things influence us in the subtle world, at the prana level, at the samskara level, at the subtle world of interaction. In the sukshma, there are a lot of things that drive us in a certain direction, that drive our thinking. My thinking and speech and actions, my intentions, we can find ourselves. I have told about this Sringeri and other places, visiting holy places. Like, for example, this Prayagraj Kumbh Mela is happening. A lot of people visit. So, visiting holy places, going to temple, etc., these kind of things will help us to develop a healthy astral alignment. There is something called as an astral alignment all of us have. So that controls a lot of unconscious things that we are not aware of. And those unconscious forces, they push us to think in a certain way, in a certain situation. They say, when your papa karma is activated, when your sinful karma is activated, you will start disrespecting authentic, proper authority. Those you will start disrespecting your well-wishers. You will start giving more importance to those who are immediately pleasing for your ego. All these the discussions, they come. When Ravana kidnaps in Ramayana, when Ravana kidnaps Sita, the discussion about how he ignores Vibhishana's advice, how he ignores Kumbhakarna's advice, how he takes up the advice of those who are feeding his ego. Similarly, the same thing happens with Duryodhana. The same thing happens with Kamsha and Shishupala. So all the Puranas, when we read, we see the negative character, the villain character. When the negative karma takes over, when they are on the path of self-destruction, how they always choose what is immediately pleasing over what is established as good in the long run. The advice of the saints and sages and well-wishers and the suggestions of the scriptures become intolerable. They cannot hear it. All these are signs. So when we find ourselves in that situation, we have to understand we are in a bad astral alignment. Our judgment is being corrupted. So we have to simply blindly follow the protocol. So we have to develop a certain discipline or a protocol to follow during the bad times, where our when they say the negative planets influence and all that. So when we are unconsciously influenced in the certain direction, we have to develop two capacities. One is to be able to observe our most compulsive thoughts and emotions, to be able to observe them without acting on them. We will have to develop that capacity through meditation, introspection, pranayama, japa, etc. And we will have to write down and keep a standard operating procedure, they say, in industry, SOP, in standard operating procedure. Like that, we have to have a standard spiritual operating procedure during the times of inner conflict and crisis, and blindly follow them. No matter how I feel, completely ignore what you feel and follow that standard operating spiritual procedure that you have put together with the guidance of teacher, with the guidance of scriptures during the good times. When you have during the good times, when you have better attitude towards the teachings, better attitude towards the saints and sages, and better attitude towards the scriptures, better attitude towards the spiritual rules. and better attitude towards sadhana, and when your thoughts are more noble, during those times, when your punya, when your good karma is active, at that time we will have to develop a standard operating procedure that will be handy when our mind goes nuts, when our papa karma is kicking in. They say in astrology, Rahu is looking at that, Ketu is looking at that, some negative papa graha is transiting your house of, over your moon. You will be overcome with negative emotions. All that they say, astrologers have a lot of ways of saying that. So during those times, we observe ourselves. We develop a habit of introspection. We see, now my thinking is not in the right direction. I am feeling a lot of compulsion to do even those things that I understand as not okay by common sense. There are certain things not allowed by scripture. Exactly on Ekadashi, I feel like going and eating onion dosa. So that is the papa karma working. It's very simple. So I have a standard operating procedure. That's why the tradition has given us certain basic set of rules. I simply blindly follow the rules that I have set for myself during the times when my mind is not friendly for my own welfare. And just bite through that period and you will overcome that period, and you may not feel that great, but just make sure that, trust the tradition, trust the guru, trust the procedures, trust the shastra, and go on. Keep your faith, stay strong. You will overcome that cloudy period, and you will emerge out of that, and suddenly you will see how those standard operating procedures, that spiritual discipline has saved you during the difficult time. And once the difficult time is over, the bad time is over, your thoughts will clear up, emotions will clear up, and you will see some light. And then you will see how it has saved you. And then you will thank that, you know the tradition and the advice and whatever you have. You will thank yourself for having that procedure, that code of discipline that you followed during the difficult time. So that is a very important point. Please consider that. Think about it. So with that note, I will finish the current class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Thank you.
Nandri.